Ich heiße Paul Kraft. Meine Heimatstadt ist Nürnberg in Bayern. An welchem Tag? Am 4. Juni 1925. As a child, I was alone. I had no brother, no sister. I wanted one in the worst way. I went to a friend that knew about those things. He said, very simple. Pour a lot of sugar on your windowsill and the stork will bring you a baby. Well, my mother told me one day, stop wasting all that sugar. It's not going to work anymore. And then I went to a public school at the Hindenburg Schule, which was for all religions. You were not asked what religion you were, you could just sign up. And then I went to the Oberschule and made the Abitur, the graduation certification, after I came back from the war. I couldn't finish it. There was not enough time. And that gave you permission, once you had the Abitur, to go to medical school or law school or whatever. I studied hard enough to pass the minimum. There were a few subjects that I liked. I had better grades, and there were others, like chemistry, that I tried to avoid. English, natural sciences, Erdkunde, we had a lot of fun in school. Oh, Karl May, ja. Das haben wir alle gelesen, Karl May. We traded the Karl May books in my class. You returned one, you got another one. Ich wuchs in einer Stadt auf, die war sehr nahe zu Adolf Hitler, und mit den Großen musste man sich etwas in Acht nehmen. Ein paar Blocks von mir wohnte Julius Streicher, who was a big wheel, and he finally got hold of a big park, beautiful park, and it was only there for him and some girlfriends that he was supposed to have around. I joined the Hitler Youth around 1935, and at the end of this year it became a must. You had to go to your meetings, and after 1 or 2 years they told me, you're going to be a group leader, and showed me what I had to do. And my house and my unit was half in the good side and half in the bad side. The good side was a low crime rate, clean streets and everything. The bad rate was a lot of socialists, communists, and they sent their children, their boys, to the Hitler Youth. So I had quite a responsibility or a task to be not only interesting for the good guys, but also had to hold a 2-hour meeting with the guys that tried to screw you up and do bad things, set fire during class, crawl out the window from the 4th floor down, and I had to find ways how to keep their interest. I did this by buying an air rifle and setting up a little shooting range. It went over so good that I had to buy a second one. And in order to get the money, I held Chinese auctions. He said, I got a rifle for you for sale. Who will give me 50 cents for it? Okay, give me the 50 cents. Who will give me 75? You owe me 25 more. And so worked a slow way until I had $35 together to buy another air rifle. But they wanted to know how come you get such good attendance in your classes? I said, it's easy, you know. He was working for Siemens and had to erect communication stations in big cities for banks, mainly. Then later he had to travel a lot to other cities, work in Berlin a lot of time. He was a chain smoker. So the first thing when he came back from the Friday night train from Berlin, he asked my mother, did you get enough tobacco? And if she didn't, she made a trip to the tobacco store right away and built it up. Later, my dad got a better job working for the army, but he had to wear a uniform. He hated that part for it. And I teased him that I was a corporal or a sergeant, and he was still a PFC. He was in a war with the Turkish army during World War I. Turks were our allies. And he played around with a grenade and it exploded, burned up his face. A few years later, my tank was burned, was hit by a Russian tank and burned, and my face was all burned, my arms and hands. I went to the Oberschule in Nürnberg, like gymnasium, and at that time, at first it didn't concern us too much. We could still get candy in the store and try to have a good time. During air raids, every house had to have so much sand in the ceiling so that if a British bomb would fall down, it would burn out in the sand that you have spread in the attic. We had air raid drills. We had an elderly lieutenant who showed us how to attack a fire that spread out from a British incendiary bomb. And that guy sort of helped me later. When the bombs were falling and I was assigned to a police car, the driver was an old retired policeman and I was his assistant, and we had to report bigger fires to the fire command that they would send the fire engines out. I was assigned the first time to the Grand Hotel in Nürnberg, across the street from the railroad station. And that fire engine had the longest ladder you ever saw. And they said, Kraft, go up there and fight the fire on the 6th floor. So you had to get used to heights pretty quick. You could also go to the movies sometimes, Friday night or Saturday night. I got a tooth and gum infection, real bad. My face swelled up, and the dentist said, come in next Tuesday, I'm going to operate on you. And I came to the dentist's office, a waiting room first, where the nurse said wait in there. And I see it was full of officers, some from my tank school, and all of a sudden the dentist's mate comes out. She read Paul Kraft next. I wasn't next. There were several lieutenants and colonels ahead of me, but I didn't mind. I got taken care of. It was a good reason always to go to the dentist, to get a few hours off, go to a restaurant and order something that was without a ration ticket. So I went to my favorite restaurant. They had horse meat and ordered a good horse meal ticket. And all of a sudden, I smell dentist. And I look around, and here this beautiful blonde from the waiting room from the dentist sits next to me. So of course I started talking to her. I said, "Why did you call me in when all these other guys were ahead of me?" He said, "I just felt sorry for you. I could see that you were in a lot of pain." The movie that night was The Moon is Blue, the first color movie in Germany. And I always remember The Moon is Blue. Early in the war, you got a red card for meats. You got a blue card for bread. Another color for something else. And you would go to the butcher shop and look at that. If you had enough ration tickets to buy 50 grams of sausage, you would buy it in small units, very small. My mother, we could not because we lived in a city, but relatives of mine, they lived in a small village in southern Germany. They had fields and also a job next. Besides that, I had one uncle, he was a tailor, also had a little land to grow things. And in my hometown, my Uncle Carl, he had a larger fields, and he said, "Tomorrow I want you to go with me. We're going to City Hall, and I'm going to weigh a big pig, and we need the weight, and I'll tell you when we can take the weight." So he did, and then he said, "Now I'm going to take away the bar, the big iron bar that I had fastened under the truck, and we weighed a truck without the iron bar." So it looked like his friend could see that we were bringing one huge pig, and it only weighed 75 pounds. And we brought a little skinny one, it weighed 4,000 pounds. So we couldn't pull that too often. But he gave me a bigger ham to take home. There's not much I could do except trying everything I could to stay away from the infantry. And by that time I read the magazines about new units, new weapons and so on. And I thought, I'm going to try to get into the Sturmgeschütze and have protection of a tank around me. And was lucky enough to be accepted. But on the 2nd of June '45, my luck ran out. My tank was hit by a Russian tank. I applied for the Air Force because I had picked that unit of the Hitler Youth where you would learn to fly a sailplane. So I went to that unit and I said, "I want to be one of yours." They said, "Good, come in every Tuesday and work in the workroom to fix broken down glider plates." After a year I said, "How much longer do I have? I fixed 50 planes by now." He said, "You just keep on coming for another 20. Northern Bavaria was famous for several glider pilot schools. So finally they said, "Kraft, next week it's your turn. You go to glider pilot school, Hesselberg, I'm Hesselberg, and show us how good you are." Took me up on the hill. The hill was in 3 parts, 3 steps. You started at the lowest one, where you only were a few feet over ground. You pass that, the next higher, and finally you get into a sailplane where you fly around over the land. And so it was my first time to go out in the glider pilot school. The instructor was a first sergeant from the Air Force. He had the 3C High Glider Pilot School. And he said, I'm going to show you something. We're going to shoot you out on that rubber sail, and see that column of trees on that side and the column of trees over there. You land right in the middle of it. There's one tree in the middle out by itself in the field. Aim for that and stay either on the left side between the trees and telephone pole or on the right side. Don't hit that one pole. Understand that? I said, yes, sir. Sat in my glider plane. They were shooting me out, and the plane was going like this. I said, gee, I want to get this way. I put the kniddle over the side. Nothing happened. The damn thing was still going straight ahead. I was the only one in the history of the glider pilot school who hit the only tree in the whole valley and knocked it down. And that was the end of my glider pilot career. I said, I better go to something more solid and pick the tank or Stuttgart. You lived a little better, you saw more if you became an officer. And you had some input in what front you want to go on. Where was the fighting? My greatest fear was against some Russian units, because it was then written in the German papers what cruelty Russian soldiers were committing, and there were enough derogatory stories that you didn't want to be on a Russian front. Therefore, when I went through the examination by army doctors again, after I was accepted, and they said, well, you're good enough for the Russian front.